Hey everybody, it's Kyle Jetzel. I'm the Driven Autism Dad. Today I want to do a video, and I'm not really sure I really want to do it because it's going to be tough to hear. It's going to be harsh. But some information has come to my attention recently that I think matters. And I want to preface this whole video by saying the only reason I'm sharing this is because I care about you and I care about your kids. I care about you being able to live a life that's happy and enjoyable in your own home with your kids on the autism spectrum. And I care about your kids growing up and being able to function in society at a reasonable level. Now, let me preface that by also saying that I have a son who's on the more severe side of autism, and there are certainly things that he has some very real limitations. But my wife and I have always told ourselves we won't be the one to limit him. So anything he wants to try, we're going to let him try. But we've also tried to set him up for success by the way he is able to manage his behaviors and the way he he has limited communication, but he is able to communicate enough. And this is I'm learning this as we go. He's a little bit older now, but here's where the rubber meets the road. Years and years ago, my wife was a big worry about, she had a big worry that would anyone love them or would anyone take care of them if something happened to us, she and I. And at the time, I didn't really understand what she meant by that. She actually created a strategy and some tactics that helped her to overcome that. And I saw a huge difference in her as she applied this strategy and the tactics. Is she kind of came back to us as a mom. She was more buoyant. She was less tired, less worn out, and it changed her. But I was unaware of what that really means to some parents until yesterday. So yesterday, I was talking to an autism mom who has a son that is very physical with her. And just so you'll know, our son was the same way. If he didn't like something, he would take a swing at my wife or I. He would come at us. It was a regular thing. If we asked him to eat a certain food he didn't want to eat, he'd take a swing at us. If we asked him to help us clean toys up, he'd make a run at us. He was just doing it, and this was when he was 4, 5, 6 years old. So getting big enough to where he could cause some damage, and we knew long term that would be an issue. And that's what this mom is facing right now. Now, the interesting thing is, at that time, my wife and I started to realize very clearly that our son was doing what worked. Okay? Now, and when he didn't get his way and he made a run at us, sometimes we would cave, right? We knew he'd make a run at us, get physical, so we gave into a lot of stuff we probably shouldn't have early on. But over a period of time, she and I had a discussion, and we both realized we had trained him to be physical because we were giving in, or it would throw us off kilter and it would kind of ruin everything, and we were trying to avoid meltdowns and trying to avoid outbursts. And so she and I together put together a strategy so that behavior no longer worked for him. And here's what's interesting. It took a while. These kids, it'll take some time for them to learn what works and doesn't work. But what they will do, and they'll always do this, if something works, they'll do it. If that means if they scream in public and it gets them some candy, they're going to scream in public and get candy. If they can run away and get what they want and we're afraid of that, they'll run away. If they can, they're going to do, and we all do this. I mean, this is not like something unusual for them. We all do what works, right? We figure out what works in our life and we do it to get what we want. But our kids don't really have a line that they won't cross, they'll do pretty much anything because they don't have that line. They don't understand. At least my son, my more severe son, didn't understand there was a line that he couldn't cross. Physical violence. He made a run at us one time with a kitchen knife because he was pretty upset about something. But my wife and I created a strategy for him, and we were very consistent in it so that when he did that, he didn't get what he wanted. And over a period of time, it changed him, and he quit. Those behaviors got lower and lower until eventually they went away. Those behaviors that were not going to serve him well in this world. Now, this is why I think I'm kind of hesitant to go here, because I've also worked with a family who has, and I mentioned this recently, a 17-year-old son who spent 13 days in jail because what he was doing worked. His violence with his parents worked, was getting him what he wanted, and they never addressed it and were so afraid of him that he continued to get more and more aggressive, and as he got bigger and bigger, it got scarier and scarier, and now this kid is completely out of control. And it's horrible, but the reason we discipline our kids, and they need us to discipline them, and I'm not saying in a harsh way or spanking or anything like that, but we need to create consequences that are consistent so that they learn what they can and cannot do in this world. Because when they grow up and get out from under us, or they want to, and they go out in the world and do this kind of stuff, the world doesn't love them like we do. We love them, and we'll be patient and kind and loving during these outbursts. We'll just call them outbursts. They can be whatever you want. The world doesn't. The world will throw their butts in jail. You know what? We love them, so we've got to really create. We've got to create some sort of ways for us to make those behaviors stop working. Now, this parent I was talking to yesterday, it really got around to the point that she said, I'm afraid of what will happen to me, because if something happens to me, the world won't love him like I do. And you know what? She's right. That kid, he's in trouble. He's out of control. He will, anytime he doesn't like anything, and I'm going to tell you right now, my son did this too, so I can say this with confidence. My son had times where he was overwhelmed and had meltdowns due to overstimulation and autism. But my son also had horrible bad behavior when he didn't get his way. And it's two completely different things. And some parents might say, you know what, well, is it autism or is it bad behavior? And in my mind, I say it doesn't matter, because you can't act like that no matter what in this world. If you flip out and go cuckoo and you're 17 years old in public and start swinging and acting crazy, nobody cares if it's autism and you're overstimulated, right? We've got to help them learn how to manage themselves. And the way we do that is through creating a world for them in love, that the things that they do that are outside the norm, that are over the top, do not ever get them what they want, right? Or do not ever become a successful strategy for them to achieve what they want. Our son now, he's a little bit older now. He'll take deep breaths when he gets overstimulated. He's learned to manage himself, because guess what? Throwing things at me and hitting me never worked for him, ever. And he realized that doesn't work, and it won't work in my home. It won't work outside my home. And now when he goes outside the home, I know, I'm confident that he's not gonna, even if he's overstimulated. And by the way, my son has very limited cognizance. I can't have a conversation with him. He doesn't follow simple steps if they're there's a lot of stuff. He's on the more severe side. And so he does get overstimulated in public on a consistent basis. But because of what we've taught him how to do in the home, what works for him is deep breaths, right? Talking to himself, I can do this. You'll hear him say that. I can do this. I can do this, right? He'll pump himself up. And these are things that he learned in our home. The hitting, kicking, biting, scratching, self-harm never worked, right? Because those things aren't acceptable. They weren't acceptable in our home, and they weren't acceptable outside our home. And we made them not work. Right? That's not going to work for him. And so this lady, we got around to it, and the reason she was worried about something happening to her is because her son has no regulation and will make a run at her, and she knows the world won't care. And guess what? She's right. If something happens to her and he's acting like that to anybody else, he's going to get disciplined in a harsh way with zero love, and they are going to eventually, if he keeps getting violent and he grows bigger and bigger, are going to lock him up, because people will not deal with those behaviors. And so I get it. So if you're a mom and you're worried if something happens to me, nobody will love him, I don't have that fear with my son, because my son can regulate himself, because we taught him in our home what would and would not work in the world, right? By modeling that in our home. So, bottom line is this. This is a harsh video. If it doesn't apply to you, hopefully you can learn something from it, right? So, the one thing that we all need to understand is everybody, we do what works. If it stops working, we stop doing it. If your son is making a run at you and hitting on you and beating on you, it's because it works. Whatever he's wanting or trying to figure out, it's working. We've got to make it stop working and give them different options to get the results they want. So hopefully that's helpful. Hopefully it didn't come off as too harsh. But I get moms who worry that nobody will love them like they do. If your kid is hitting people and biting people and scratching people, you're right. Nobody will love them like you do. And you shouldn't expect them to. Imagine some strange kid came up to you and started beating on you and hitting on you. You wouldn't care if you had autism or not. You'd have to defend yourself. You'd have to protect yourself. So hopefully that's helpful, and hopefully it wasn't too harsh. The bottom line here is I want happiness for you, and I want ultimate happiness for you. I want you to be able to manage your life in a way that allows you to thrive as you raise these kids on the autism spectrum. And I know by doing that, you're going to give them the best chance in this world, and you're going to give them the best chance to learn how to manage themselves so that they can function at the highest level possible, whatever that may be, in this world, and get the best results for themselves as well. Hopefully that's helpful. We'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.